The fluorescent lights of the Atlanta Federal Building buzzed overhead like dying insects. Sarah Collins stood in front of the projection screen, her index finger tracing a red line connecting 8 faces, 5 CIA operatives, 2 analysts, 1 deputy director. Behind her, 12 agents from various agencies sat in uncomfortable silence. "This is the network," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the stale conference room air. "They've been selling classified intelligence to foreign buyers for at least 18 months, maybe longer." Max lay at her feet, his amber eyes tracking every person in the room. The Belgian Malinois had been unusually tense all morning, his ears swiveling at sounds only he could hear. A CIA officer in the back row leaned forward. "Lieutenant Collins, these are serious allegations. Do you have hard evidence?" Sarah clicked to the next slide. Bank transfers, encrypted communications, meeting logs that didn't match official records. She'd spent 3 months building this case, cross-referencing data that shouldn't have been accessible to local police. But when FBI agent Marcus Chen had pulled her into a joint task force investigating a weapons trafficking ring, the patterns had emerged like constellations in a previously dark sky. "The evidence is solid," Sarah replied. "These operatives have been using agency resources to—" The room tilted. Sarah gripped the edge of the table, her vision swimming. The faces in front of her blurred into flesh-colored smears. Her heart hammered against her ribs, too fast, then too slow, then a rhythm that felt like her chest was collapsing inward. Max was on his feet instantly, pressing against her leg. A low whine escaped his throat. "Lieutenant," Agent Chen stood. "Are you all right?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but her tongue felt thick, uncooperative. The projector light seemed to strobe, sending daggers of pain through her skull. She'd felt off for days. Fatigue she'd blamed on late nights reviewing files. Occasional dizzy spells she'd attributed to skipping meals. This was different. Her knees buckled. Max barked. Sharp, urgent, a sound he only made when danger was imminent. Strong hands caught her before she hit the floor. Voices overlapped, urgent and distant at the same time. "Call an ambulance! Get her on the floor! Is she breathing?" Sarah tried to focus on Max's face, his eyes locked onto hers, intelligent and afraid. He was trying to tell her something, trying to warn her, but the darkness was rising like floodwater, and she couldn't fight the current. Her last conscious thought was the wrongness of it all, the bitter taste in her morning coffee, the cramping in her stomach she'd ignored during the briefing, the way the CIA officer in the back row hadn't looked surprised when she collapsed. Then, nothing. The wail of the ambulance siren pulled Sarah briefly toward consciousness. She was moving, that much registered, strapped to a gurney. Bright lights overhead, paramedics speaking in medical shorthand she couldn't quite pass. Max was barking, frantic, furious. "Sir, you need to keep that dog back. He's not leaving her." That was Chen's voice, strained but firm. "He's a sworn officer. He stays with his handler." Sarah felt Max's presence beside the gurney, his weight pressing against the metal frame. She wanted to reach for him, to tell him it was okay, but her arm wouldn't respond to the command. It hung limp, foreign, as if it belonged to someone else. "BP is dropping, 80/50. Pupils responsive but sluggish. Heart rate erratic. Possible cardiac event. Cardiac event." The words floated through Sarah's consciousness. She was 33 years old. Ran 5 miles 3 times a week. No family history of heart disease. This didn't make sense, unless it wasn't natural. The thought crystallized for just a moment before the darkness reclaimed her. "They poisoned me. The spies I exposed. They poisoned me." But the realization came too late, and there was no one she could tell. Mercy General Hospital rose like a concrete monolith on Atlanta's north side. The ambulance bay doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, and Sarah's gurney was wheeled into controlled chaos. Nurses in scrubs, doctors shouting orders, the chemical smell of disinfectant mixing with blood and fear. Max stayed glued to Sarah's side, his collar jangling against the metal gurney rail. A security guard moved to intercept him. "Police K-9!" Agent Chen flashed his badge. "He's trained for hospital environments. He doesn't leave her." The guard hesitated, then nodded. In the aftermath of several high-profile cases where K-9 units had saved lives, protocols had shifted. Max wore his official Atlanta PD vest and badge. Technically, he had more clearance than most civilians. They wheeled Sarah into an elevator. Max's nails clicked on the polished floor as he followed, pressing himself against the gurney. His nose worked constantly, sampling the air, cataloguing threats. 4th floor, ICU, private room at the end of a quiet hallway. The medical team transferred Sarah to a hospital bed with practiced efficiency. Monitors beeped to life around her. An IV line was inserted into her arm. Electrodes attached to her chest. Within minutes, she was wired into a network of machines tracking every function of her failing body. What happened to her? A doctor in blue scrubs reviewed the paramedic's notes. "Collapsed during a briefing," Chen said. "No prior history of cardiac issues." The doctor frowned at Sarah's vitals. "Her enzyme levels are consistent with myocarditis, possibly viral. We'll need to run a full cardiac panel and keep her under observation." Myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle. It could be caused by viruses, autoimmune disorders, or... Sarah's mind supplied the answer even through the fog. Toxins. But she couldn't speak, couldn't warn them. The paralysis had spread from her limbs to her vocal cords. She was a prisoner in her own body, watching through heavy-lidded eyes as nurses adjusted monitors and checked fluid bags. Max stationed himself beside the bed, his body tense and coiled. He didn't lie down, didn't relax. His eyes tracked every person who entered the room with predatory focus. Agent Chen stood near the door, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, she collapsed right after presenting the evidence. They're calling it cardiac inflammation." A pause. "I don't know. Something feels off." Sarah wanted to scream at him. "It's not cardiac inflammation. It's poison. Check everyone who came near my coffee this morning. Check the CIA agents in that room." But her voice was gone. Only her eyes could move, and even that required immense effort. A nurse approached with a syringe. Max's head swiveled toward her, a low rumble building in his chest. "It's okay, boy," the nurse said softly. "Just antibiotics for your partner." Max didn't move. His eyes locked on the syringe with laser intensity. The nurse hesitated, then showed him the label. "See? Ceftriaxone. It's safe." After a long moment, Max's growl faded. He allowed the nurse to inject the medication into Sarah's IV line, but he watched every milliliter disappear into the tubing. Chen ended his call and approached the bed. "They're sending someone from the task force to secure your evidence. The CIA is launching an internal investigation." He studied Sarah's face. "You're going to be okay, Collins. Whatever this is, you'll beat it." Sarah wanted to believe him, but the taste of metal on her tongue and the way her heart stuttered in her chest told a different story. This wasn't an infection. This was an execution, slow, clinical, designed to look like natural causes, and the executioners were likely already in the building. Night fell over Atlanta, painting the city in shades of amber and shadow. In room 447, Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, caught between the prison of her body and the chaos of her mind. Max never left his post. As visiting hours ended and Agent Chen was forced to leave, the K-9 remained. Hospital policy technically prohibited animals in patient rooms, but the charge nurse took one look at Max's badge and the protective way he positioned himself beside Sarah's bed, and decided that policy could be flexible. "He can stay," she told the orderly, "but if he becomes aggressive, we call animal control." Max wouldn't become aggressive, not without reason, But if someone gave him reason, Sarah knew, the hospital would see exactly what 7 years of tactical training had created, a weapon with fur and loyalty. The room settled into an uneasy quiet. Monitors beeped their steady rhythm. The IV drip marked time in measured drops. Beyond the window, helicopters traced paths across the night sky, their searchlights painting the clouds. Sarah's eyes cracked open. The paralysis was lifting fractionally. She could feel her toes now, could flex her fingers slightly. Whatever they'd given her was metabolizing, leaving her system. But that meant they'd come soon, to finish what they'd started. Max's ears suddenly pricked forward. His body went rigid. Sarah couldn't hear what he heard, but she recognized that posture. He'd detected something, someone. Footsteps in the hallway, soft-soled shoes on linoleum. A shadow passed by the small window in the door, paused, moved on. Max released a breath, but he didn't relax. Sarah tried to move her hand toward him. Her fingers twitched, managed to shift an inch across the blanket. Max noticed immediately, pressing his muzzle against her palm. His nose was cold and damp, real, solid, alive. She was alive. And she was going to stay that way. Whatever came through that door next, whatever plan the infiltrators had set in motion, they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd assumed Sarah would be alone, helpless, easy to eliminate. They'd forgotten about Max. The monitor above her head displayed her heart rate, elevated but steady. Oxygen saturation holding at 94%. Blood pressure climbing back toward normal ranges. Sarah's mind began to clear, sharpening like a blade drawn from cold water. She catalogued everything in the room. The IV stand, potential weapon, the call button, if her fingers could reach it, the bathroom door, possible escape route if she could walk. The window, 4th floor, too high to jump. Max would be her early warning system, her guardian, her weapon if necessary. She just needed time for her body to recover, time to regain enough strength to fight back. The night stretched on. Max's vigil continued. And somewhere in the hospital, Sarah knew people were preparing to ensure she never left this room alive, but they would have to go through Max first, and that, Sarah thought with grim satisfaction, would be the last mistake they ever made. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. when the first nurse entered. She moved with the practiced quiet of someone accustomed to night shifts, rubber-soled shoes barely whispering against linoleum, a tablet computer glowing softly in her hands. Her scrubs were navy blue, her ID badge clipped to her chest pocket. Nothing about her appearance triggered alarm, except Max's reaction. The Belgian Malinois lifted his head from where it rested near Sarah's hand, his amber eyes tracking the woman's approach. His ears came forward, focused. A barely audible rumble built in his chest. Not quite a growl, but a warning nonetheless. The nurse paused 3 feet from the bed. "Easy, boy, just checking vitals." Max didn't move, but he didn't relax either. His gaze followed her hands as she reached for the tablet mounted at the foot of Sarah's bed, scrolling through digital readings with professional efficiency. Sarah watched through slitted eyes, her consciousness floating in that strange space between sleep and waking. The paralysis had receded further. She could feel her legs now, could curl her toes inside the thin hospital socks. But her body still felt heavy, unresponsive, as if wrapped in invisible chains. The nurse made notes on her tablet, checked the IV bag, adjusted the blanket covering Sarah's legs, all normal procedures, all perfectly innocent. But something was wrong. Sarah couldn't identify what exactly. Maybe it was the way the nurse's eyes lingered on the monitors, a fraction too long. Maybe it was the slight tension in her shoulders, the careful way she moved around Max's watchful presence. Or maybe it was simply instinct. The same instinct that had kept Sarah alive through 7 years of high-risk police work. The nurse left without incident. Max's eyes followed her until the door closed, then remained fixed on that door for another full minute. Sarah tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound emerged beyond a faint rasp. Her throat felt raw, her vocal cords unresponsive. She managed to move her hand slightly, her fingers brushing against Max's ear. The K-9 immediately turned his attention back to her, pressing his muzzle gently against her palm. His tail gave a single tentative wag, the first sign of relief she'd seen from him since the collapse. "Good boy," Sarah mouthed silently. Her hand trembled with the effort of staying lifted, but she needed him to know. Whatever was happening, they were in it together. Max settled back into position, his body angled so he could watch both Sarah and the door simultaneously. His breathing was controlled, measured. Alert rest, a state Sarah recognized from their training. He could maintain this vigilance for hours if necessary. The minutes crawled past. The hospital hummed with nocturnal activity, distant voices, elevator chimes, the rumble of a cleaning cart in the hallway. Through the window, Atlanta's skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against velvet darkness. Sarah's mind worked despite her body's limitations. She replayed the briefing in the federal building, examining every detail for clues she'd missed. The CIA officer who'd questioned her evidence, she tried to recall his face, his name tag, Morrison, Morgan. The memory slipped away like water through cupped hands. Had he been one of the infiltrators, or just a skeptical agent doing his job? Her coffee. Someone had brought her coffee that morning. A gesture she'd thought was kindness. Agent Chen's assistant, a young woman whose name Sarah couldn't remember. The cup had been sitting on the conference room table when Sarah arrived. She'd drunk it gratefully, caffeinating for the long presentation ahead. Had it been poisoned then, or earlier at the precinct, before she'd even left for the federal building? The questions multiplied, but answers remained elusive. Sarah's body demanded rest, her consciousness drifting despite her efforts to stay alert. She fought against the pull of sleep, knowing that unconsciousness meant vulnerability. But exhaustion won. Her eyes closed. Her breathing deepened, and Max's vigil continued alone. The second intrusion came at 4:15 a.m. A different nurse this time, male, heavy-set, with a surgical mask covering the lower half of his face. He carried a tray with several syringes, his movements brisk and efficient. Max was on his feet before the man cleared the doorway. The growl was immediate, unmistakable, and absolutely serious. The nurse froze. "Whoa! Easy there, officer." Max's lips curled back, revealing teeth designed by evolution for one purpose: to bite, hold, and tear. His body coiled, ready to launch across the 3 feet, separating him from the intruder. "I'm just here to administer medication," the nurse said, his voice carefully controlled. He held up the tray, showing the syringes. "Doctor's orders, cardiac stabilizers." Max didn't care about explanations. His training was explicit: protect the handler, assess threats, neutralize danger. And every fiber of his being screamed that this man represented danger. The nurse took a careful step backward. "Look, I don't want any trouble, but your partner needs this medication. Her heart rhythm is still unstable." Sarah's eyes opened. Through the fog of fatigue and residual paralysis, she saw the standoff, Max blocking access to her bed like a furry sentinel, the nurse hesitating in the doorway with his tray of syringes. She tried to speak, managed only a weak croak, but it was enough to draw both their attention. The nurse's eyes locked onto hers. For just a moment, Sarah saw something flicker in that gaze. Recognition? Calculation? Before she could analyze it, his expression smoothed into professional concern. "Lieutenant Collins, your K-9 partner is preventing me from administering necessary medication. Can you call him off?" Sarah's mind raced. Could she trust this man? The syringes on his tray could contain anything: life-saving drugs or lethal injections. There was no way to verify his identity, his credentials, his intentions, but Max had already decided. The K-9's judgment had been honed through thousands of hours of training, hundreds of real-world operations. He could detect explosives, narcotics, and human remains. He could sense fear, aggression, and deception through mechanisms science still didn't fully understand. And right now, Max was telling her this man was a threat. Sarah made a decision. She let her eyes close again, feigning unconsciousness. If she couldn't speak to call Max off, the nurse would have to leave or risk being attacked by a trained police K-9. The nurse stood frozen for another 10 seconds. Then, slowly, he backed toward the door. I'll come back later, when someone can restrain the dog. Max tracked his retreat, not relaxing until the door clicked shut. Even then, the K-9 remained standing, his attention fixed on that doorway like a soldier guarding a breach. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, not from cardiac dysfunction, but from fear and adrenaline. Her monitors registered the spike, beeping frantically. Within seconds, footsteps rushed down the hallway. A different nurse appeared, an older woman with kind eyes and genuine concern on her face. "What's going on?" Her heart rate just spiked to 140. Max assessed her with the same intensity he'd shown the male nurse, but after a moment, his posture eased fractionally. Whatever threat assessment calculations ran through his canine brain, this woman passed. She approached the bed slowly, hands visible, making no sudden movements. "Hey there, officer. I'm Nurse Patricia. Been doing this job for 30 years, and I've worked with plenty of K-9 units." She glanced at Sarah. "Your partner's having a rough night, isn't she?" Sarah managed to nod, a tiny movement but deliberate. Patricia checked the monitors with efficient competence. Heart rate's coming back down. "That's good." She examined the IV bag, the medication chart on the wall. Who was supposed to administer the cardiac meds? Sarah tried to form words. Her vocal cords vibrated uselessly. "Don't strain yourself, hun." Patricia patted her arm gently. "Let me check the schedule." She pulled out a tablet, scrolling through digital records. Her frown deepened. "That's strange. There's no cardiac medication scheduled for you until the morning rounds. Who was trying to give you an injection?" Max whined softly, a sound Sarah recognized. Vindication, warning. "I told you something was wrong." Patricia's expression hardened. She pressed the call button on Sarah's bedrail. "Security, this is Patricia Chen on ICU 4. I need you to pull security footage from room 447 for the last hour." Someone just attempted to administer unauthorized medication to a patient. Sarah's pulse jumped again, this time with hope. Patricia believed her, or at least believed something was wrong. The nurse moved to the door, peering into the hallway. "Did you get a look at him? The one with the syringes?" Sarah managed a weak gesture toward the door. Her hand trembled with the effort. "Heavy-set, wearing a mask?" A nod. Patricia's jaw tightened. "I know most of the night staff. Nobody matching that description is assigned to this floor tonight." She turned back to Sarah, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "Honey, is someone trying to hurt you?" Sarah's eyes said everything her voice couldn't. "Yes, help me. Trust Max." Patricia processed this information with remarkable calm. She'd worked in Atlanta hospitals long enough to know that violence and conspiracy weren't limited to crime shows. She'd seen domestic abusers try to finish what they'd started, gang members attempting to eliminate witnesses, even a case where a corrupt police officer had tried to silence a rape victim. "All right," Patricia said firmly, "here's what we're going to do. I'm posting security outside your door. Nobody gets in without my personal verification, and your K-9 stays exactly where he is." She looked at Max with new respect. He knew, didn't he? Knew that man was trouble. Max's tail gave a single thump against the floor. Patricia managed a tight smile. "Smart dog." She checked her watch. It's almost shift change at 6 a.m. I'll make sure the day nurse knows the situation. Until then, you've got me, hospital security, and one very protective police K-9 between you and whoever's trying to hurt you." She left to coordinate security, and Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. The terror that had been building in her chest eased slightly, not gone, not by a long shot, but manageable. Max returned to his position beside the bed, but he didn't lie down. His vigil had been validated, the threat was real, and he'd been right to sound the alarm. Sarah's hand found his head, her fingers weak but determined. She scratched behind his ear, their signal for good work. Max leaned into the touch just for a moment before his attention snapped back to the door. Minutes later, a security guard took up position outside room 447. Patricia returned with fresh IV bags, checking each label carefully, showing them to Max before connecting anything to Sarah's line. "These are saline and electrolytes," she explained. "Nothing else. I mixed them myself from sealed containers." She met Sarah's eyes. "I don't know what's going on, Lieutenant, but I believe you're in danger. We're going to keep you safe until you can tell us who and why." Sarah wanted to explain everything: the CIA infiltrators, the evidence she'd presented, the certainty that she'd been poisoned as retaliation. But her voice remained locked away, and her body still felt like it belonged to someone else. So she communicated the only way she could, with her eyes, with small nods and hand gestures, and with absolute trust in the Belgian Malinois who'd appointed himself her guardian. Dawn approached slowly. The sky beyond the window lightened from black to deep blue to pale grey. Atlanta began to wake, traffic building on the highways, lights flickering on in office buildings, the city stirring from its brief sleep. In room 447, Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, her body slowly metabolizing whatever toxin had been used to incapacitate her. Each time she woke, Max was there, watching, waiting, protecting. The male nurse never returned. Security reviewed the footage and confirmed what Patricia suspected. The man wasn't on staff. His ID badge had been cloned, his credentials forged. He disappeared into the hospital's labyrinth of hallways before security could intercept him. But he'd failed. Whatever his mission had been, to finish poisoning Sarah, to inject an air bubble into her IV line, to simply verify she was helpless, Max had thwarted it. By the time full morning arrived, Sarah had regained enough control to whisper hoarse words. Her first sentence was directed at Max. "Good boy, best partner I ever had." Max's tail wagged, and for just a moment the tension in his body eased. But his eyes never left the door, because they both knew the night had been only the first attempt. The people who wanted Sarah dead were still out there, still plotting, still dangerous, and the next attack could come at any moment. The shift change at 7 a.m. brought a controlled chaos that the infiltrators had been waiting for. Sarah watched through tired eyes as Nurse Patricia briefed her replacement, a younger woman named Kelly, with bright pink scrubs and an exhausted smile. The handoff was thorough. Patient history, current medications, the suspicious incident with the unauthorized nurse, the security protocols now in place. But shift changes created vulnerabilities. New faces meant new opportunities. In the shuffle of departing and arriving staff, someone could slip through. Max sensed the change in atmosphere. His body tensed as unfamiliar voices filled the hallway. Morning rounds began, doctors making their circuits, nurses distributing medications, orderlies delivering breakfast trays. The ICU transformed from the quiet vigil of night into the bustling machinery of daytime hospital operations. Sarah had regained more control over her body. She could lift her arms now, could turn her head without the room spinning. Her voice remained weak but functional, enough to give simple commands to Max, enough to answer yes or no questions from the medical staff. Dr. Reeves. The cardiologist assigned to her case entered with a tablet and a concerned expression. He was in his 50s, grey hair, steady hands, the kind of physician who'd seen everything and rarely seemed rattled. "Lieutenant Collins, how are you feeling this morning?" "Better," Sarah rasped, "stronger." "That's good to hear." He reviewed her vitals on the monitor. "Your enzyme levels have stabilized. Heart rhythm is much improved. Whatever caused the initial episode seems to be resolving." Sarah wanted to tell him it wasn't an episode, it was attempted murder. But without proof, without her voice at full strength, the explanation would sound like paranoid delusion. "The thing is," Dr. Reeves continued, "your blood work shows some unusual markers. Nothing I can definitively identify, but—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Has anyone in your family had unusual reactions to medications? Any history of chemical sensitivities?" Sarah's pulse quickened. He suspected something. Not poison necessarily, but something unnatural in her system. "No," she managed, "no history." Dr. Reeves nodded slowly. "I'm going to order a comprehensive toxicology screen. It'll take a few days to process, but I want to rule out environmental exposure or—" The door opened. A physician in a white coat entered. Tall, lean, early 40s with wire-rimmed glasses and a hospital ID that read, "Dr. James Mitchell, Internal Medicine." Max's reaction was immediate and violent. He lunged forward, barking with a ferocity Sarah had only heard during tactical operations. His teeth were bared, his entire body coiled to attack. "Jesus!" Dr. Mitchell stumbled backward, his clipboard clattering to the floor. Dr. Reeves moved to position himself between the aggressive K-9 and his colleague. "Lieutenant, control your dog." But Sarah didn't, because Max had never been wrong. Not once in 7 years. "Max, hold," she commanded, her voice stronger than it had been in hours. The K-9 froze in place, still growling, still focused on the man in the doorway with laser intensity. Dr. Mitchell had recovered his composure, but Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes, recognition, fear. "I was just coming to consult on the case. Dr. Reeves requested an internal medicine evaluation." Dr. Reeves frowned. "I did, but not until this afternoon. You're early." "I had a gap in my schedule. Thought I'd—" "Who authorized you to enter this room?" The new voice came from the hallway. Agent Marcus Chen pushed past Dr. Mitchell, his FBI credentials in hand and his expression hard. "This patient is under federal protection as of 0600 this morning." Sarah's heart surged with relief. Chen had come through. He'd escalated her protection. Dr. Mitchell's professional mask slipped. "I'm a physician. I don't need authorization to see patients." "You do when that patient is a federal witness in an active investigation." Chen's hand rested casually near his hip holster. "Step out of the room, doctor. Security will verify your credentials." For a moment, tension crackled in the air. Dr. Mitchell's eyes darted from Chen to Sarah to Max, calculating odds, weighing options. Then his shoulders relaxed in apparent surrender. "Of course, I apologize for the confusion." He backed toward the door, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. Max never stopped growling. As soon as Dr. Mitchell disappeared into the hallway, Chen moved to Sarah's bedside. "You were right. Everything you presented yesterday, the CIA brass is running scared. They've launched an internal investigation, but someone's trying to shut you up before you can testify." Sarah's throat tightened. "The evidence secure. I made copies of everything and sent them to 3 different field offices. Whatever happens, the truth is out there." Chen glanced at Max. "Your partner has good instincts. That doctor had fake credentials. We're running his biometrics now." Dr. Reeves had gone pale. "Are you telling me we have an imposter in this hospital?" "At least one," Chen confirmed. "Possibly more." The implications rippled through the room. If infiltrators could fake medical credentials, they could access any patient, administer any drug, manipulate any record. The hospital wasn't a place of safety, it was a hunting ground. Sarah forced herself upright, ignoring the protest of her weakened muscles. "I need to leave, now!" "Not yet," Dr. Reeves said firmly. "Your heart is still recovering. Moving you could trigger another cardiac event. Staying here will trigger a permanent cardiac event," Sarah shot back. "Courtesy of a bullet or poison." Chen pulled out his phone. "I'm arranging a secure transfer. FBI medical facility, armed escort, the works. But it'll take time to coordinate." The monitors screamed. Sarah's heart rate on the display spiked to 180, then dropped like a stone. The steady beep, beep, beep of the cardiac monitor stretched into a single continuous tone. Flatline. "Code blue!" Dr. Reeves grabbed for the crash cart as alarms erupted throughout the ICU. "She's in cardiac arrest." But Sarah wasn't. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, could feel the rush of blood through her veins. She was alive, conscious, breathing. The monitor was lying. Max went berserk. He barked and snarled, trying to position himself between Sarah and the door as medical staff rushed in. Hands reached for Sarah, preparing to start CPR on a patient who didn't need it. "I'm fine!" Sarah yelled, ripping electrodes from her chest. "The monitor's been tampered with!" The medical team froze, confused. The flatline continued its death scream. Agent Chen was already moving. He grabbed the monitor, yanked it away from the wall, examined the connection ports. Someone swapped the electrode cables. "It's reading a dummy signal." Dr. Reeves stared in disbelief. That's not possible. These systems have fail-safes. Nothing's impossible when you have inside access." Chen's voice was cold. This was a setup. The fake flatline would bring staff running, create chaos, and in that chaos... Sarah finished the thought. "Someone would inject me with something lethal. Call it a complication. File a death certificate. Problem solved." The room fell silent, except for Max's continued growling and the useless wail of the corrupted monitor. Then pandemonium erupted. Hospital security burst in, weapons drawn. Real doctors and nurses mixed with potential infiltrators. In the confusion, Sarah couldn't tell friend from enemy. Everyone in scrubs was suddenly a threat. Everyone with a syringe was potentially an assassin. Max positioned himself at Sarah's bedside, creating a perimeter of fur and teeth. He snapped at anyone who came too close, his training overridden by pure protective instinct. "Everyone out," Chen commanded, his FBI badge held high. "This room is now an active crime scene. If you're not federal law enforcement, you leave. Now." Medical staff protested. Patient care, hospital protocols, liability concerns. Chen ignored them all. He grabbed a desk chair and wedged it under the door handle, barricading them inside. Sarah swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her body protested, weak and unsteady, but adrenaline overrode the weakness. She pulled out the IV line, ignoring the trickle of blood from the injection site. "We can't stay here," she said. "No," Chen agreed. He was already on his phone, voice urgent. "This is Agent Marcus Chen, FBI, badge number 847392. I need immediate extraction from Mercy General Hospital, ICU 4, room 447. Federal witness under active threat. Yes, I'll hold." Max pressed against Sarah's leg, his solid warmth a grounding force in the chaos. She buried her hand in his fur, drawing strength from the contact. "Good boy," she whispered. "You knew. You tried to warn me." The K-9 looked up at her, and Sarah saw intelligence in those amber eyes. Not human intelligence, but something equally valuable, instinct honed by evolution and sharpened by training. Max couldn't explain why Dr. Mitchell set off his alarms, why the male nurse triggered his aggression, why certain people registered as threats while others didn't. But he didn't need to explain. He just needed to be right. and he'd been right enough to keep Sarah alive. Chen finished his call. Extraction team is 15 minutes out. FBI hostage rescue. They're treating this as a barricade situation. 15 minutes, Sarah repeated. They could breach this door in 30 seconds if they wanted to. Then we make those 30 seconds count. Chen moved the hospital bed against the door, creating a secondary barrier. He grabbed the crash cart, positioned it as an obstacle, not impenetrable, but enough to buy precious seconds. Sarah looked around the room for anything that could serve as a weapon. An IV stand, decent club. A fire extinguisher mounted on the wall could blind attackers. The window, 4th floor, not survivable, but maybe a psychological deterrent if she stood near it threateningly. Max needed no weapons. He was a weapon. If they come through that door, Sarah said quietly, Max will attack first. He'll go for whoever's holding a gun. That's his training. I know, Chen said. I've seen K-9 units work. No, you don't understand. Sarah met his eyes. Max won't stop until he's taken down the threat or someone takes him down. He won't retreat, won't surrender. It's not in him. Chen processed this. You're saying if they breach, we use Max as our first line of defense. I'm saying Max will die for me if I let him. Sarah's throat tightened. And I won't let him. So we hold this room until extraction arrives, and if they breach before then, I'm going out that window and taking Max with me, 4th floor or not. The room fell silent. Outside, voices argued. Hospital administration demanding access. Security trying to sort legitimate staff from potential threats. The growing awareness that something had gone catastrophically wrong in their carefully controlled environment. Minutes ticked by. 5, 10. Each second stretched like taffy. Sarah checked her body's status. Legs shaky but functional, arms weak but improving, lungs clear, heart beating too fast from adrenaline but otherwise steady. She could fight if necessary, not at full capacity, but enough to be dangerous. Chen stood by the door, his service weapon drawn, eyes fixed on the barricade. Max remained at Sarah's side, coiled and ready. The corridor outside had gone quiet. Too quiet. They're regrouping, Sarah said, deciding whether to risk a frontal assault or wait us out. FBI is 5 minutes away, Chen reported. If they're smart, they'll abort. They've already committed, Sarah countered. Fake credentials, sabotaged equipment, attempted murder of a federal witness. They can't abort. They can only finish the job or run. As if summoning them with her words, the door handle rattled, someone testing the barricade, assessing vulnerabilities. Max's growl built to a full-throated snarl. Sarah moved to the window, yanking it open. Cold morning air rushed in, carrying the sounds of the city 4 stories below. Traffic, sirens in the distance, life continuing, oblivious to the life or death drama unfolding in room 447. FBI! This is Agent Chen. Breach this door and you're assaulting a federal officer. Silence from the hallway. Then, impossibly, laughter, cold and certain. Agent Chen, this is Deputy Director Morrison, CIA. Stand down. We're taking custody of Lieutenant Collins under national security protocols. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Morrison, the name she'd tried to remember from the briefing. The officer who'd questioned her evidence, one of the infiltrators, and he'd just played the highest card in the intelligence community deck, national security. Sir, with respect, I need to verify. Agent Chen, Morrison's voice hardened. Open this door, or I will have you arrested for obstruction. Lieutenant Collins is in possession of classified intelligence that she obtained illegally. She's coming with us. Sarah met Chen's eyes. The agent looked torn, his loyalty to procedure warring with his instinct that something was deeply, catastrophically wrong. Don't, Sarah said quietly. Whatever happens, don't open that door. Outside, the sound of something heavy being wheeled into position, a battering ram. Hospital security wouldn't have one. but a CIA tactical team would. Sarah looked at the window. 4 stories, certain injury, possible death, but if she stayed, death was certain. She made her choice. "Max," she commanded, "come." The Belgian Malinois moved to her side instantly, ears forward, awaiting orders. Sarah climbed onto the window ledge. The morning air was sharp and cold. Below, the hospital's emergency entrance bustled with ambulances and people, witnesses who would see what happened next. Agent Chen stared. "You can't... Watch me." Sarah looked down at Max, meeting those intelligent amber eyes one last time. "I'm sorry, partner, but you're not jumping. You're staying here. You're evidence. You're a witness, and you're going to survive this." Max whined, sensing her intent. He tried to climb up beside her. "Max, stay!" The command was absolute, backed by 7 years of unwavering authority. The K-9 froze, torn between obedience and every protective instinct in his body. The door exploded inward. The battering ram had done its work. Men in tactical gear poured through. Not FBI, not police. CIA operators with suppressed weapons and cold efficiency. Sarah looked back one final time. Saw Max's anguished expression, saw Chen raising his hands in surrender, saw the muzzle of a weapon swinging toward her, and jumped. Sarah hit the second-floor awning with bone-jarring force. The reinforced canvas buckled under her weight, but didn't tear. She rolled with the impact, years of defensive training converting deadly momentum into survivable motion. Her shoulder screamed, her ribs protested, but she was alive. And she was moving. She scrambled to the edge of the awning, dropped the remaining 15 feet to the ambulance bay pavement. Her legs nearly buckled on landing, but adrenaline kept her upright. Around her, EMTs and hospital staff froze in shock. A woman in a hospital gown had just fallen from the sky. Sarah didn't stop to explain. She ran. Her bare feet slapped against cold pavement. The hospital gown flapped around her legs. She had no shoes, no phone, no weapon, just the clothes on her back and the desperate need to survive the next 60 seconds. Behind her, shouts erupted from the 4th-floor window. She didn't look back. The ambulance bay connected to a public parking garage. Sarah sprinted toward it, weaving between parked emergency vehicles. Her body protested every step, muscles still weak from the poisoning, lungs burning, vision swimming, but she pushed through the pain. A gunshot cracked the morning air. The bullet sparked off concrete 3 feet to her left. Suppressed weapon, but not silent. People screamed. EMTs dove for cover. Chaos erupted in the ambulance bay. Sarah threw herself behind a parked ambulance, her heart hammering. She was unarmed, barely clothed, and being hunted by trained CIA operatives. The odds were impossibly stacked against her. But she'd survived worse. She scanned her surroundings with tactical precision. The parking garage entrance was 30 feet away. If she could reach it, lose herself in the maze of concrete and cars, she might have a chance. The CIA couldn't risk open gunfire in a public space. Too many witnesses, too many cameras. Then again, they'd already tried to kill a police lieutenant in a federal building and a hospital. Maybe they didn't care about witnesses anymore. Sarah grabbed a heavy flashlight from the ambulance's side compartment. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. She risked a glance around the vehicle's bumper. 2 men in civilian clothes, tactical operators trying to blend in, moved through the bay with the practiced efficiency of hunters. They weren't running, didn't need to. Their target was injured, unarmed, trapped, or so they thought. Sarah waited until they separated, one moving left while the other swept right. Classic pincer movement. She let the right-side operative pass her hiding spot, then exploded from cover. The flashlight caught him across the temple before he could react. He went down hard, his suppressed pistol clattering across pavement. Sarah grabbed the weapon, checked the magazine, 12 rounds, and kept moving. The second operative spun at the sound of his partner falling. Sarah fired twice, center mass. The man dropped, his own weapon discharging harmlessly into the sky. Hospital security was converging now, confused and overwhelmed. Sarah kept the pistol low but visible, her other hand raised in a non-threatening gesture. "Atlanta PD, Lieutenant Sarah Collins, these men are trying to kill me." She didn't wait to see if they believed her. She ran for the parking garage, taking the entry ramp at a dead sprint. Her bare feet left bloody prints on the concrete. She'd cut them during the jump, adrenaline masking the pain until now. The garage was a concrete labyrinth. Sarah moved between cars, staying low, using vehicles as cover. She needed to get to ground level, to the street, to anywhere with enough public visibility that the CIA couldn't risk another attempt. But first, she needed Max. The thought stopped her cold. She'd left him, ordered him to stay. Every protective instinct in her body screamed to go back, to fight her way to the fourth floor, to get her partner out of that room. But Max was safer where he was. The CIA wanted her dead, not him. He was a witness, evidence, but not the primary target. And Agent Chen was there. Chen would protect him, would get him out. At least, Sarah had to believe that. Because the alternative, imagining Max fighting and dying to reach her, was unbearable. She kept moving. Second level, first level, ground floor. Sarah emerged onto a street she didn't recognize. Morning rush hour was building. Cars, pedestrians, the normal flow of Atlanta life. She stood in a hospital gown, barefoot and bleeding, holding a stolen pistol, and the sheer normalcy of the world around her felt surreal. A taxi idled at a red light 15 feet away. Sarah made a decision. She tucked the pistol into the back of her gown, approached the cab, and climbed into the back seat before the driver could protest. "Hey, I got a fare coming. Police emergency." Sarah met his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Drive. Now. I'll pay triple the meter." The driver took in her appearance. Hospital gown, wild eyes, blood on her feet, and made his own calculation. This woman was either crazy or in serious trouble. Either way, argument seemed unwise. He drove. Where to? Sarah's mind raced. She couldn't go to the police precinct. If the CIA had infiltrated federal agencies, local PD could be compromised too. She couldn't go home. Too obvious. Hotels required ID and credit cards, both of which would leave digital trails. But she knew someone. Someone outside official channels. Someone who owed her. Ponce de Leon Avenue, Sarah said. "Near the old theatre. I'll direct you from there." The driver nodded, pulling into traffic. Sarah slumped against the seat, allowing herself 10 seconds of relief. She'd escaped. She was alive. Max was, she had to believe, safe. But the fight wasn't over. It had barely begun. The safe house was a second-floor apartment above a tattoo parlor, accessible through a fire escape that Sarah had used 3 years ago during an undercover operation. The apartment's owner, a former informant named Marcus, who'd gone straight after Sarah kept him out of prison, had given her a key. "Emergency use only," he'd said. This qualified. Sarah picked the lock. Her key was at home and slipped inside. The apartment was small, dusty, clearly unused. Perfect. She locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle, and finally allowed her body to collapse. She sat on the worn carpet, back against the wall, gun in lap, and took inventory of her injuries. Bruised ribs, sprained shoulder, cut feet, muscle tremors from residual poisoning. Nothing life-threatening, nothing that would stop her. She needed clothes, shoes, a phone, and most urgently, she needed to know if Max was safe. Sarah searched the apartment. Marcus had left it minimally furnished, but functional. There was a landline phone, a television, and a closet with some old clothes. She found jeans that almost fit, a hoodie, and sneakers 2 sizes too large, but better than nothing. In the bathroom, she cleaned and bandaged her feet with supplies from under the sink. Splashed cold water on her face, met her own eyes in the mirror. She looked like hell, but she was alive and she was angry. The apartment's landline worked. Sarah's fingers hesitated over the keypad. Who could she trust? Agent Chen seemed genuine, but he was FBI. One phone call to the wrong person, and the CIA would triangulate her location. Local PD was risky for the same reason. She needed someone outside official channels, but with enough resources to help. Someone with a vested interest in exposing CIA corruption. Sarah dialed a number from memory. It rang 4 times before a cautious voice answered. "Who is this?" "It's Collins. I need help." Silence. Then, "Jesus Christ, Sarah. The news is saying you're dead. Jumped out of a hospital window during a psychotic break." But that's the story they're selling? That's the story everyone's buying. FBI, local PD, even your own department. They're saying the stress of the investigation caused a mental breakdown. Sarah's jaw clenched. Of course, easier to explain her death as suicide than admit to conspiracy. "It's a lie, Marcus. Everything about it. The CIA tried to kill me because I exposed their infiltrators." "Sarah, that sounds crazy, paranoid." "Yeah, I know, but it's true, and I need your help." The line went quiet. Marcus wasn't a saint. He'd done questionable things, moved in criminal circles, but he'd kept his word when it mattered, and Sarah had kept hers, giving him a second chance when she could have buried him. "What do you need?" Marcus finally asked. "A burner phone, cash, transportation, and eyes on Mercy General Hospital ICU 4. There's a K-9 officer named Max. He was in my room when the CIA breached. I need to know if he's alive." "You want me to check on a dog while you're being hunted by the CIA? He's not just a dog. He's my partner, and he's the only witness who can corroborate what happened." Marcus sighed. "Give me 2 hours. I'll call this number back." The line went dead. Sarah set down the phone and moved to the window. Below, the street carried on with its usual rhythm. She watched for surveillance, for tactical vehicles, for any sign that she'd been tracked. Nothing, for now. She turned on the television, flipping to local news. Her own face stared back at her from the screen. Her official police photo, professional and composed. The chyron read, "Atlanta Police Lieutenant dies in apparent suicide." The reporter's voice was solemn. "Lieutenant Sarah Collins, a decorated officer with the Atlanta Police Department, died this morning after jumping from a 4th-floor window at Mercy General Hospital. Sources say Collins had been hospitalized for cardiac issues and was reportedly delusional and combative in the hours before her death. Her K-9 partner, Max, was removed from the hospital by FBI agents. No foul play is suspected." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. They'd written her story: crazy cop, stressed out, tragic suicide, and Max removed by FBI agents. Was that Chen? Or someone claiming to be FBI? The anger that had been simmering since the federal building briefing finally ignited into cold, focused rage. They'd tried to poison her, tried to kill her in a hospital bed, and when that failed, they'd tried to shoot her in front of witnesses. Now they were destroying her reputation and lying about her death. They'd made a mistake. They'd assumed she was dead, or too injured to fight back, or too isolated to matter. They were wrong on all counts. Sarah Collins was alive. She was armed, and she was coming for them. But first, she needed Max back, because whatever battle was coming, she needed her partner beside her. They'd survived 7 years of operations together. They'd survived this too. The phone rang. Sarah grabbed it. "Yeah? Your dog's alive." Marcus's voice carried relief. "FBI took him into protective custody. He's at a federal facility outside the city. High security. They're treating him like a VIP." Sarah's chest loosened. Max was safe. Protected. "Can you get a message to Agent Marcus Chen, FBI? Tell him Sarah Collins is alive and I need to talk." "Sarah, if you contact the FBI, Chen's clean. I trust him. And I need him to know I'm not dead, so he doesn't hand Max over to the wrong people." Another pause. "I'll try, but Sarah, be careful. Whatever you've stepped in, it's big enough that people are willing to kill a cop in broad daylight. That means they're desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. I know, Sarah's voice hardened, but I'm dangerous too. She hung up, sat back against the wall, closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them again, the afternoon sun was slanting through the window. She dozed off, exhaustion claiming what adrenaline couldn't sustain. The burner phone Marcus had promised sat on the floor beside her, along with an envelope of cash and a note. Cars in the alley, blue Honda, keys under the mat. Stay alive, Collins. Sarah pocketed the phone and cash, grabbed the gun, and headed for the door. The CIA thought she was dead. That gave her an advantage, brief but exploitable. She could move freely because no one was looking for a ghost. And ghosts, Sarah thought grimly, could haunt the living in ways they never expected. She had evidence to protect, a partner to recover, and a conspiracy to burn to the ground. The hunters had become the hunted, and Sarah Collins was done running. The federal facility sat 40 miles outside Atlanta, disguised as a corporate office park. Sarah watched it through binoculars from a wooded hillside, tracking patrol patterns, identifying security cameras, counting guards. Getting in would be impossible. The building was a fortress, 12-foot walls, armed security, biometric access points. Even with her police credentials, she'd be stopped at the gate, and her credentials were probably flagged in every law enforcement database by now. But she didn't need to get in. She just needed Max to get out. The burner phone buzzed. Sarah answered without greeting. "Chen here." Agent Marcus Chen's voice was tight with tension. "Got your message. You have 30 seconds to convince me you're really Sarah Collins and not some elaborate trap. 7 years ago, you transferred to Atlanta from the Sacramento field office because your daughter needed specialized medical care at Emory. You never told anyone the real reason. You let them think it was a career move." Silence. Then, "Jesus, you are alive." "Barely. Where's Max?" "Safe. Federal protective custody. But Sarah, you need to come in. Let us handle this properly. The CIA Inspector General is compromised or complicit. I don't know which, but I can't trust official channels." Sarah kept her binoculars trained on the facility. "I need Max, and I need the evidence you secured from the federal building. Sarah, even if I wanted to help you, and I do, I can't just hand over a police K-9 and classified evidence. There are protocols." "They tried to kill me in a hospital, Chen. They faked my death. Protocols are what got me poisoned in the first place." Her voice hardened. "I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking you to help me stay alive long enough to expose the people who broke every law that matters." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "What do you need?" Sarah outlined her plan. It was risky, dependent on split-second timing, and required Chen to put his career on the line. But it was the only option that didn't end with her in CIA custody. Or dead. "That's insane," Chen said when she finished. "That's why it might work." Another pause. "I'll need 4 hours to set it up. Can you stay hidden that long?" "I've stayed hidden this long." "Sarah?" Chen's voice softened. "Max knows you're alive. Don't ask me how, but that dog knows. He's been impossible since we brought him in. Won't eat, won't settle, just sits by the door and waits." Sarah's throat tightened. "Tell him I'm coming." "I don't think I need to." The line went dead. 4 hours later, as dusk painted Atlanta in shades of amber and shadow, Sarah crouched on the rooftop of an abandoned warehouse 3 blocks from the federal facility. The blue Honda Marcus had provided was parked in the alley below, engine running, driver's door open for quick escape. The burner phone buzzed with a text. "Packages mobile, ETA 8 minutes. See." Sarah checked her gear, the stolen CIA pistol, 10 rounds remaining. a flare gun she'd bought from a marine supply store, a climbing harness and rope scavenged from a construction site, and a determination that burned hotter than fear. She scanned the street below. Chen's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Transfer Max to a different facility, create a paper trail showing the K-9 was being relocated for security reasons, and route the transport vehicle past this specific location. The convoy would include 2 FBI vehicles and a K-9 transport van. What happened in the 3-block window between the federal facility and the highway was officially off-script, plausibly deniable. Chen could claim he'd been ambushed, the K-9 stolen by unknown assailants. The truth was simpler. He was giving Sarah her partner back and risking everything to do it. Headlights appeared in the distance. 3 vehicles moving at bureaucratic speed. Sarah lifted the flare gun, aimed at the empty street ahead of the convoy, and fired. The flare exploded in brilliant red light, illuminating the intersection like a scene from hell. The lead FBI vehicle slammed on its brakes. The K-9 van behind it skidded to a stop. Doors opened. Agents emerged, weapons drawn, scanning for threats. Sarah was already moving. She rappelled down the warehouse's side using the climbing rope, hitting the ground 20 feet from the K-9 van. The rear doors were reinforced, locked from the outside. But Chen had given her the code. She punched in 6 digits. The lock disengaged with a metallic click. The doors burst open from inside. Max exploded out like a missile, 70 pounds of muscle and fury and absolute certainty. He knew her scent, knew her voice, knew her in ways that transcended human understanding. Max. Sarah dropped to one knee as the Belgian Malinois slammed into her, nearly knocking her over. His entire body vibrated with joy, tail wagging so hard it shook his whole frame, tongue licking her face, whining and barking in a language only they understood. "I know, boy, I know, I'm here." Sarah buried her face in his fur for just a second, long enough to feel his warmth, his realness. The proof that she hadn't lost everything. Then training reasserted itself. We need to move, now. She ran for the Honda with Max at her heels. Behind them, FBI agents shouted, some giving chase, others checking the flare site, all of them playing their roles in Chen's theatre of plausible deniability. Sarah threw herself into the driver's seat. Max leaped into the passenger side. She slammed the car into gear and accelerated hard, tires squealing as they shot down the alley. Gunfire erupted, not from the FBI agents, but from a black SUV that had appeared behind the convoy. CIA operatives, Sarah realized. They'd been monitoring the K-9 transfer, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. Bullets sparked off the Honda's trunk. Max barked furiously, his instinct screaming to engage the threat. But Sarah kept driving, weaving through narrow streets, using her knowledge of Atlanta's geography to lose the pursuit in a maze of residential neighborhoods. The SUV stayed with them. Persistent, professional, not giving up. Sarah made a split-second decision. She couldn't outrun them forever. The Honda was a decade-old civilian vehicle, no match for the CIA's tactical transport. But she could outthink them. She headed for downtown, toward crowds, toward witnesses, toward the one place the CIA couldn't risk open violence. The Peachtree Center was hosting a conference. Thousands of people, security cameras everywhere, police presence guaranteed. Sarah screeched into the underground parking garage, abandoning the Honda between 2 SUVs. Max, with me. They ran for the elevators. The CIA vehicle roared into the garage seconds later, but Sarah and Max were already moving into the building proper, blending into the crowd of conference attendees. Sarah had no badge, no credentials, but Max was her ticket. A police K-9 drew attention, mostly positive, occasionally wary, but always memorable. Security guards nodded them through. Attendees made way. No one questioned a cop and her dog. Sarah navigated to the building's central atrium, A massive open space with glass elevators, escalators, and hundreds of witnesses. She found a quiet corner near a fountain, sat down heavily, and let Max press against her leg. "We can't stay here," she muttered, thinking aloud. "But we can't leave either. They're watching the exits." Max's ears swiveled. He was tracking something, sounds, scents, threats Sarah couldn't perceive. His body tensed. Sarah followed his gaze. Across the atrium, partially hidden behind a pillar, stood a man in a business suit. Wire-rimmed glasses, lean build, watching them with patient, predatory focus. Dr. James Mitchell, the fake physician from the hospital. One of the infiltrators who'd tried to finish her in the ICU. He wasn't alone. Sarah spotted two more operatives, a woman near the escalators, a man by the conference registration desk. They'd surrounded her position, cutting off escape routes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sarah's hand moved to the pistol concealed under her hoodie. 10 rounds, 3 targets. Hundreds of civilians in the crossfire, unacceptable odds. But then Max did something unexpected. He stood, moved to Sarah's side, and placed himself between her and the nearest operative. Not aggressively, just positioning himself as a living shield, his body language clear. "You want her, you go through me first." The operative's hand drifted toward his concealed weapon. Max's lips pulled back, revealing teeth. A low growl rumbled through the atrium, not loud but unmistakable. Heads turned. People noticed. Conference attendees stopped mid-conversation, sensing predator and prey dynamics playing out in their midst. The operative's hand moved away from his weapon. He couldn't draw, not with this many eyes on him. The moment had become too public, too observed, too documented by 100 smartphone cameras. Sarah understood the shift immediately. Max had changed the equation. His presence, his visibility, his unmistakable status as a police K-9 meant the CIA operatives couldn't act without creating an incident that would be recorded, live-streamed, and impossible to spin. She stood, keeping Max close, and walked deliberately toward the main entrance. The operatives watched but didn't move. Couldn't move. Sarah had turned the hunters into spectators in their own operation. She emerged onto Peachtree Street with Max at her heel. Evening rush hour provided cover, thousands of people leaving work, heading home, creating a human shield more effective than any tactical gear. Sarah's burner phone buzzed. Chen's number. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Peachtree Center. They tried to grab me. Max stopped them." "Sarah, you need to get to the old 4th Ward. There's a building, used to be a police training facility, shut down 3 years ago. I'm sending coordinates. Be there in 1 hour. "Why?" "Because the director of the FBI just called me personally. Your evidence checks out. Every allegation, every connection you mapped. They're preparing to arrest 12 CIA officers tonight." Chen's voice carried grim satisfaction. "You were right. About all of it." Sarah's knees nearly buckled with relief. They believe me? They believe the documents? And they believe Agent Chen, who's willing to testify that he witnessed attempted murder of a federal witness. A pause. "You're not crazy, Sarah. You're a hero. Now get to that facility so we can keep you alive long enough to testify." The coordinates arrived via text. Sarah memorized them, deleted the message, and started walking. Max stayed pressed against her leg, his presence warm and solid and real. They navigated Atlanta's streets as dusk deepened into night. Sarah stayed in crowds, used reflective surfaces to check for tails, moved with the paranoid precision of someone who'd survived multiple murder attempts in 48 hours. The abandoned training facility sat in a neighborhood halfway between renewal and decay. Sarah approached carefully, checking sight lines, identifying escape routes. The building was dark, apparently empty, but Chen's car sat in the rear parking lot. Sarah entered through a side door, Max's senses on full alert. The interior was stripped bare, empty rooms, exposed wiring, graffiti on walls. But in the main training room, portable lights had been set up. Agent Chen stood beside a woman in a dark suit, FBI Director Catherine Walsh, if Sarah remembered her photos correctly. "Lieutenant Collins!" Walsh's voice was professional, measured. "We have a lot to discuss." Over the next hour, Sarah laid out everything: the briefing, the poisoning, the hospital, the fake flatline, the rooftop jump, every detail, every suspicion, every piece of evidence she could provide. Walsh listened without interruption. When Sarah finished, the director nodded slowly. "We've arrested 7 of the 12 officers you identified. The others have disappeared, fled the country, most likely, but we'll find them. And my testimony will be crucial. We're convening a closed session with the Senate Intelligence Committee. Your evidence, combined with financial records we've seized, will dismantle one of the most damaging intelligence compromises in CIA history." Sarah felt the weight of the last 2 days settling on her shoulders: exhaustion, relief, and a hollow anger that justice would never fully satisfy. What about me? My record? Reinstated, with commendations. The suicide story will be retracted, a full apology issued. Walsh glanced at Max. "Your partner's status as an honorary investigator will be formalized. He saved your life multiple times, from what I understand." Sarah looked down at Max, who sat patiently beside her, amber eyes fixed on her face. "He's always saved my life. I just usually don't make it this dramatic." Walsh allowed a small smile. "Lieutenant, you've done your country a service. The conspiracy you exposed went deeper than you know. Weapons trafficking, intelligence sales, compromised operations that cost American lives. Your courage stopped it." "I just wanted to survive," Sarah said quietly. "That's what makes you a hero. Heroes don't seek glory. They survive impossible odds and refuse to quit." Walsh stood, extending her hand. "Thank you, Lieutenant Collins." 3 weeks later, Sarah stood on the rooftop of Atlanta Police Headquarters, looking out over the city she'd sworn to protect. The evening sun painted everything gold: buildings, streets, the distant mountains on the horizon. Max sat beside her, his official medal catching the light. The ceremony earlier had been awkward: police brass, federal officials, cameras and speeches. Sarah had endured it with gritted teeth, accepting commendations she didn't feel she'd earned. But Max's medal felt right. He'd earned every ounce of that metal. "You know what the funny thing is?" Sarah said, scratching behind Max's ear. "Everyone keeps calling us heroes, but all we did was refuse to die." Max leaned into the scratch, tail wagging slowly. "They made a mistake, those CIA infiltrators. They thought I was just a local cop who'd stumbled onto something too big for her. They thought I'd be easy to eliminate." Sarah smiled grimly. "They forgot that local cops survive because we're too stubborn to quit. And they definitely forgot that K-9 officers never fight alone." Max barked, sharp, certain, agreeing completely. Below, the city continued its evening rhythm, unaware that 2 weeks ago a conspiracy had nearly succeeded in silencing the truth. Unaware that a lieutenant and her K-9 partner had fought their way through poisoning, attempted murder, and impossible odds. That was fine with Sarah. Heroes didn't need parades. They just needed to know they'd done the right thing and survived to protect another day. She stood, stretched her healing shoulder, and headed for the rooftop door. "Come on, Max. Let's go home." The Belgian Malinois trotted after her, and if a dog could smile, Sarah was certain Max was smiling. They'd survived, together, the way they always did, and tomorrow they'd be back on duty, because the city never stopped needing protection, and Sarah Collins never stopped answering that call. The rooftop door closed behind them, and the sunset painted Atlanta in shades of victory.